everybody, and welcome to our Highland Park Town Hall. I'm Deb Gross with Pittsburgh City Council, your representative, and I am actually looking for Jeffrey Dorsey. Jeffrey's going to come up and say a few welcome remarks about the Union Project. But I also want to take this opportunity to thank the mayor and all of the city directors. I want to thank you all for all of your questions. Many of you logged on to the Engage page at the city and kind of pre-registered some of the questions. Certainly, we've looked through 311. We've looked through all of our email accounts. We tried to prepare as best we could so that we would have some answers for you for the very many questions that have been forwarded to us about all the very many projects in Highland Park and the neighborhoods and our many neighborhood issues. And here, come on up, Jeffrey. Are you going to use that mic, or you can just, yeah, okay, thank you.
Jeffrey, here you go. Just take this one.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it. Hello. Good evening. Welcome everyone to Union Project. My name is Jeffrey Dorsey, and I'm the executive director here. And we're very honored to host you all as part of the town hall meeting tonight. Honorable Mayor Ed Gainey and your team, thank you all for being here. Of course, our councilwoman, Deb Gross. I will introduce her again in a moment. And how many of you have been to Union Project before? Just a show of hands. Well, so welcome back. It's great to see so many of you have been here. Welcome to you if you haven't been before. Before we jump into our future plans for our community, I want to do something radical. I want to ask everyone to just take a breath. Just slow down for a minute. I know spring is in the air. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Maybe you've come from a busy day at work. Maybe you just made dinner for the kids so you could get here on time. Just take a moment, take a deep breath, take a moment and ground yourself in your body. Take a moment to look around at this beautiful community space. Take a look around at your beautiful community neighbors. All of us, regardless of what we believe or who we work for, are working to make Pittsburgh a safer, more accessible, and more inclusive community. I also want to acknowledge the land on which we stand that for thousands of years sustained Native people before European settlers even arrived. And that a century ago, this beautiful building was built to house the Second United Presbyterian Church. And 30 years later, it became the home of the East End Baptist Church. And then in 2002, Union Project's founders, who were Mennonite, founded Union Project here, with the goal of renovating it back to purposes of building more inclusive communities using the arts and crafts. So for the last 20 years, this space has continued to demonstrate what we mean by building inclusive community, hosting events just like this one. Whether it was to discuss safer streets with Zone 5 public safety, like Pittsburgh, I think Scott's here, give him a shout out, or Pittsburgh Regional Transit. We've hosted Buddhist retreats, Jewish Passover seders, Muslim iftar dinners, the Pittsburgh Racial Justice Summit, music recitals, African drumming, Irish and classical theater. We've hosted traditional weddings, same-gender unions and marriages. I believe the mayor said he may have even had a reception here.
I got married. This was where we had my reception.
Terrific, thank you. We've hosted bridal showers, first communions, birthday parties, graduations, quinceañeras, celebrations of life, funerals, repasts, Day of the Dead ceremonies, Chinese New Year celebrations, fundraisers, and even a petting zoo, right in this very room. And of course, every year, the weekend of Mother's Day, Union Project hosts our Mother of All Pottery sales, which we invite you back to on May 13th. Union Project's mission has always focused on arts and craft-based programs to build skills, self-esteem, and self-sufficiency. Whether it was training community members to help us renovate and restore all 155 of these beautiful stained glass windows in our building, or teaching former adjudicated adults to be stained glass glazers, or using our former cafe to train youth aging out of foster care as coffee baristas, Union Project has cultivated over 150 full-time equivalent jobs, the majority of which were in the arts, for our residents to thrive. Our most impactful arts experiences, however, are through ceramics. Hopefully you saw or talked to Marseille, who is doing a ceramic throwing demo out front on your way in. But why? Well, you see, we believe that the arts are essential to express ourselves, our culture, to rehabilitate and heal. And clay is one of our world's oldest art forms. You probably use ceramics every day without even realizing it. How many of you drank out of your favorite coffee mug this morning? Or stood on your ceramic kitchen floor? Or maybe had to use the bathroom and sit on a porcelain toilet? These are all made out of clay. Think about it. Ceramics, or clay, is made of the very earth itself. So how do we use clay to bridge communities today in Pittsburgh? Our community studio runs over 100 programs a year for all ages and skill levels, from beginner to professional artist. We specialize in working with communities systemically excluded from opportunities. This includes professional level training for BIPOC artists, artists from the LGBT community, and artists from the disabilities community, helping them learn to make, market, and sell their own artwork. And we are committed to making clay accessible to all. We partner with over 50 social service providers, schools, and churches to bring innovative clay education programs to youth and families to express and empower themselves, to make cool objects, and to heal. From hospitals to working with mothers in recovery to crisis centers, we bring clay to life wherever it's happening. Our community members made Leaves of Hope in response to the Tree of Life synagogue shooting. And we make Butterflies of Hope projects to affirm the hope and give hope to the Pittsburgh transgender community, which is currently under fire. I know the mayor is committed to ending gun violence in our city, so we ask the mayor and the team of elected officials and all of you here to help us arm our children with the arts, to put clay in their hands so they can be part of creating and molding their beautiful future, which they deserve. Finally, we'd love to bring clay to your community. Our new Wheelmobile, which is our studio to go, can bring ceramics anywhere there's a road. For more information on how to partner with us, or to rent space here to hold your event in this beautiful space, which is also now air conditioned, by the way, please sign up for our monthly newsletter at the door or grab a handout on your way out. I'll stick around too in case you have any questions. So finally, thank you all for being here and for what you do to make Pittsburgh more equitable, more safe, more just, and more creative. Now, without further ado, it's my privilege to introduce our Councilwoman Deb Gross.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I feel calmer already. You're very, very soothing. We might have to bring you back up again if we run into trouble tonight. So I want to thank everybody again for coming out. As I mentioned before, we've kind of pulled together a lot of your questions. But just so you know, as you came in, there are index cards and pens. We also have some people standing by to collect your questions if you've written them down, or if you need another index card or a pen, or you didn't get one. Could everybody who are helpers raise their hands? Who are our helpers? There's back there, there's two. Anybody else doing? Oh, and the people all at the table. Sorry, they're all in the back now, but they will be moving through the room when we get to the Q&A part, so that we can make sure that we go through the questions and your cards, that we make sure that we hit everybody's topics, and so everybody gets some time on the topics that matter to them. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to introduce all, well, maybe I'll let the mayor's side introduce yourselves really quickly. How would you like to do that? We'll do quick introductions. We have from the city departments a brief. I'm going to look at all the directors here. I want you to go through your slides really quickly. There are a lot of slides that will address some of the topics that we heard about in advance, but they're going to keep it really quick, so we are not spending more than 20 minutes on slides, so that we can get to discussion time. Right, and so you'll get some of the overview, we'll get to some of the topics, but then you'll have time for your questions and answers. Again, if you have a card, please try to articulate your question on a card, hand it to one of the helpers. We'll make sure that we don't miss any of the topics that way. And then we'll have time for you to get a response from the city directors speaking directly to your issue. Great. So shall I hand it off to, I'm handing it off to Rebecca Rinaldo next, who is the Director of Neighborhood Services. Did I say that title? It's close enough. That's her title, close enough. And she's going to run through some of the rules of engagement that we always do at community meetings. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Hi, everyone. It's so great to see so many of you here tonight. Hello to everyone online. Thank you for joining us virtually. My name is Rebecca Rinaldo. I'm the Senior Manager for the Mayor's Neighborhood Services team. Our team manages constituent relations and community engagement for the city. So if you received a flyer on your doorstep or stuck in your door over the last couple weeks, that was my amazing team out there canvassing door by door. Shout out to the Neighborhood Services team in the back. So just to reiterate what the councilwoman said, because we have a full house and we expected a full house because we know what an engaged community this is, we want to make sure to be able to address everyone's questions and concerns. So that is why we are doing Q&A via the note cards. So like the councilwoman said, we've got Sharon, Chuck, Pam, Michelle. We've got like 7 people here from the city who will kind of be walking around collecting your note cards during the event, during the presentation. And then Councilwoman Gross is going to moderate the panel after the presentation and read the questions to the relevant leadership here. And this will also help us make sure that the folks at home can hear what the question is, because what we've run into a lot in the past is when we try to have folks from the crowd ask the questions, the people at home don't hear, and then they feel like they're missing out on the discussion. So thank you for engaging this format with us. We might have some discussion points tonight that are uncomfortable for some of us. We might get passionate, and we welcome your passion. We just ask that we keep the vibe and the culture in this room respectful, because we're all here because we love our community and we love our city, and we want to kind of stay grounded in that common shared love and passion. So with that being said, can you kind of just clap once if you agree to those norms for tonight's meeting? Okay. Excellent. Do you want to do the introductions, or should we?
I'm up. You ready?
Okay. So then it's my honor to introduce the leadership from the city here tonight. Bring a new one. And Mr. Mayor Ed Gainey.
Good evening. Good evening, Highland Park. How you doing? We're going to do better now. Good evening, Highland Park. How you doing? There we go. I appreciate it. Thank you. Before I get started, I just want to real quickly introduce my team. And the reason why I'm introducing them is because I want you to understand who's here, because we know we got a lot of questions from infrastructure to the park, to the gun range, to the traffic calming, the whole 9. And so I wanted to bring everybody out that can answer your questions. Now, there'll be some questions that we just can't answer, and we'll be honest with you, that we don't have that answer at the time. If we have the answer, we will give it. If we don't know, we will say we don't know. I'm not one of these elected officials that's going to come out here and say I got the answer to everything, because I don't. And I've never been that type of an elected official, even when I was the state representative for this area, to just come out and be able to tell you something that I know that I have no idea what I'm talking about. And I know a lot of mayors come out here in the previous times and have done that. I don't want to do that. I've never done it, and I'm not going to start today. I've told my team to have honest dialogue with you so that you can understand exactly what we're trying to do and what we're trying to get accomplished. To me, that's important. So we're going to go real quick down the line, starting over here.
Hello, I'm Kaz Pellegrini, Senior Project Architect with the Department of Public Works. I'm here to talk about the Highland Park pedestrian tunnel.
Chris Hornstein, I'm the Director of Public Works.
I'm Paige Anderson. I'm a project manager in DOMI's Traffic Division, here to talk about some of our Complete Streets projects in the area.
Good evening. I'm Kim Lucas, and I'm the Director for the city's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure.
I'm Lisa Frank. I'm the city's Chief Operating and Administrative Officer.
Hello, I'm Jake Pollack, the Deputy Mayor and the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, and also a Highland Park resident.
Hello, I'm Lee Schmidt. I'm the Public Safety Director for the city.
Good evening. I'm Will Pickering. I'm the CEO for the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority.
All right, so for the folks at home, we just learned that, and we actually learned a few minutes ago, and been working through it, that not all the live stream options are working the way we hoped they would be, despite multiple rounds of testing in advance of this meeting. So if I'm hearing Audrey correctly, the YouTube link
is on the Pittsburgh Facebook, the mayor's Facebook, and the city of Pittsburgh and mayor's Twitter.
All right, so Mayor Gainey's Facebook page is streaming this meeting. And the Zoom link, which is on this town hall's Engage page link, is working correctly. And we apologize for the inconvenience, and we'll work to get the other streams up and running as soon as we can.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pam Collier. I serve as Special Assistant to Mayor Gainey.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sharon Watkins, and I am the Office of Financial Empowerment Manager for Mayor Gainey's administration.
Good evening, everyone. David Jones, Assistant Director of Public Safety.
And also in the back, we have Philip Lawson, who serves as Administrative Assistant to Chief Wheatley and Deputy Chief Williams. You want to stand up? Go ahead, stand up. Now, brand new to our team, we have some new newbies to our team.
Hey everyone, my name is Giselle Francis, and I am the Community Liaison to the Neighborhood Services team.
And then Jessica, the busy one in the back. You want to say your name?
Hi everyone, I'm Jessica Farrell from the Neighborhood Services team.
Lori?
Hi everyone, I'm
Chuck? Michelle? Thank you. Did I miss anyone? Oh, wait, over here. Alicia? Angela? We have a brand new person, second day. We came ready to serve today, and then we, of course, have, did I miss anybody over there?
Jake Wheatley, Chief of Staff to Mayor Gainey.
Maria Montaño, Communications Director for Mayor Gainey.
Hi everyone, I'm Audrey Wells. I'm a press officer in the communications office.
I'm good.
Okay.
Did everybody introduce themselves? The reason why I brought everybody out is because I know you have a lot of questions. And I want to be able to answer as many questions as I can. I want to be as transparent as we can. So I brought everybody out. Stephanie, I know that one. Where's Steph at? Where's she at? Where's Stephanie? And I know one of the biggest questions is the shooting range. And we're going to have a conversation about the shooting range. And I'm going to tell you, I know I've been in office for a year and a half, and it's been in office for a year and a half. A lot of things that we've had to overcome, a lot of things that we've had to deal with. They promised me a 6-month vacation. I got a 48-hour vacation, you know, and we had to respond and do what we can to make sure that we keep the city up and running. And like I told my team, and I tell everybody, I'm I'm happy we didn't come in under good times. I think adversity makes you, and I think the more adversity you have, the better you become as leaders. So as we talk about the shooting range, when I came in, there was no plans for the shooting range. But as a state representative, I do know what it means. And I know I've had my team begin to look at different ways that we can address and where we can put it. We're not there yet. We're looking. We've only been in for a year and a half. And I know that this problem has been 30 years in the making. I know that and realize it. And we understand that you want it moved. And we understand that it has to be done. But in a year and a half, I can't say that we have the right plan yet. What I can tell you, Stephanie, is that we're working on it. We've been working on it. Deb has been saying, hey, what's going on? We've been having meetings. Jake Pollack can talk to you about that as well. But we don't have all the answers. It wasn't like there was a plan when we came in to say what we were going to do with the shooting range, and you and I know that. So what we've done from here, when we begin to do, is just talk about exactly how we can address this shooting range. It's not an easy thing. We got a couple things that we're thinking about, but you still got to vet them. You still got to figure it out. So I don't want you to think we're not working. You know me well enough to say if we're working on it, we're working on it. But you also know me well enough to say that if I don't have a full answer, I don't have a full answer. And I want to be honest with you this evening, I do not have the full answer. What I can give you is that we're working on it, and I understand it. But I'm not going to be the mayor to come up here too and tell y'all all that, as previous mayors have done, we got it, we got it, we got it. We can't have it if there's no plan. So the reality is we're starting a plan to see how we can address it. And so I wanted to make sure I talked about that first, because I know that's very important, and I do understand why. I used to live in Highland Park. I get the reason why. But it's not something that I can wave a magic wand and just make everything better. It's something that we have to plan to do, and it's something that we have to continue to work on. But Stephanie, I know you've been leading this charge. And my word to you is that we'll work on it to get something done. But I'm not here today to be able to say what we can do. I've only been in for a year and a half with no plan about a shooting range. So we have to create it as we go. And that I give you my word.
All right, and we got a little bit of feedback that even with the mics, if we could all just try to...
The person that was having problems with the technology of getting through, is everything okay right now before we continue? Yes, thank you. All right, thank you.
All right. Okay, so panelists, even though you've got mics, please try to uplift your voice loudly. We're hearing from folks in the back that they are having trouble hearing. So we already did the introduction, so we can go to the next slide.
Do all y'all have no card? Does everybody have a no card? Does anybody need a no card? That's a better question.
All right, so if you still need your note card collected, kind of just wave your hand. If all of our helpers can collect them and give them to James in the back. So we just wanted to kind of quickly overview some of the questions we got in advance from everyone here, which we thank you for those of you who did that. There were some common themes in the questions we got in advance. Basic services and maintenance of roads, parks, and sidewalks, making sure our infrastructure on our streets, our sidewalks, and our parks is accessible for people of all abilities. Lots about traffic calming, making our streets slowing down traffic and making our streets safe for those who walk, bike, or even just live in the area. Increasing our pedestrian and cyclist infrastructure throughout the community, and some questions about our utility companies coordinating their projects with construction projects as well. So thank you again for those of you who submitted those questions. It was really helpful for us in putting this presentation together. And like we've said, we will continue to collect questions throughout the night if you weren't able to submit one in advance. So with that, I'm going to hand things off to Deputy Mayor Pollack, who is going to briefly just review some of this year's budget priorities, especially with regards to how they're relevant to some of the questions we heard in advance. Can we go to the next slide, Audrey?
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you all for being here this evening. As a general overview, the 2023 operating budget and capital budget for that matter that Mayor Gainey introduced and was sponsored and passed by City Council makes some fairly critical investments in a variety of areas that were touched on in your questions. The most, I guess, basic way in which we've sought, thank you, to reinvest in our core capabilities is in investing in our ability to deliver core city services better, right? And so that includes an almost $4 million new investment in the Department of Public Works to allow us to do things like clear snow from our streets more quickly and efficiently and effectively, and also to when the weather is better, do a better job of maintaining vacant and abandoned lots that the city is in control of. But those investments also include improving the ways in which we review permit applications or the ways in which we review zoning criteria. So, an important focus of our work under this budget and under Mayor Gainey's leadership is to improve the ways in which we do basic government services and to improve the timelines and the effectiveness of those services. We are also investing heavily in asset management, and that's a kind of an industry term, but I think you'll almost quickly think of that as bridges and roads and other pieces of core infrastructure. It was only about 3 weeks into this administration's term in office that the Fern Hollow Bridge had a unexpected collapse, but that was a prompt to us to think carefully and diligently about the ways in which we plan long-term for the health of our core infrastructure assets, and as a result we've made major strides in the way in which we manage our infrastructure, including first and foremost bridges. We were also heavily invested in ways that we can better manage the real estate that the city owns and or controls. There aren't extensive examples of that in this neighborhood, but certainly I think everyone here is aware of places where the city has a lot of land that might be greenways or right-of-way adjacent areas that we control and manage, and it might also be individual parcels that were previously privately owned but are now in the city's custody. And wherever those exist, we want to make sure that we are maintaining them in a good order, and then also are disposing of them quickly and effectively. And so we've invested significant resources in improving the processes by which we handle the land that we hold, such that it is contributing positively to the neighborhood in which it's situated, and then also being turned over to folks who want to put it to use as quickly as possible. I already mentioned snow removal. We've made investments in consolidating certain services, like the very capable and effective neighborhood services team that helped organize tonight's meeting, into city government in a way that makes it effective in deploying this kind of engagement and in hosting these kinds of meetings, so that everyone in our city has an opportunity to be seen and heard through these processes. And then lastly, affordable housing is, of course, a key principle for this administration and a key need of our cities. And there are numerous ways in which we can make those investments and ensure that that's front and center in the way we deliver services. In the 2023 budget, we've dedicated a significant and even precedent-setting level of resources to new investments in affordable housing that will be made kind of effective later this year as we borrow some outside funds to accelerate our investment in that space. So.
All right, so I'm going to hand the floor back to the councilwoman to kind of moderate through the rest of the presentation about some more specific projects happening in this community. And I'm going to leave this side of the table with a mic so that we have enough to go around.
I don't see the actual slide. I'm going to have to look.
Can anybody see the slide?
Is it all clear for you all? Great. So, Rebecca, is it just this one, or is it? Oh, okay. So, yeah, so next up we have Director Lucas. We know that we've been working on traffic calming issues throughout the neighborhood. We've been able to get some installations like the speed humps on Heberton. We had a working group for a year of Highland Parkers and Morningsiders and advocates for the ADA community on upcoming suggestions to calm Reservoir Drive as it reopens, so that we can get plans so we can have shared space so people can feel safer walking and bicycling as it reopens to cars. But most importantly, you all probably have seen the phase 1 of Stanton Avenue that reached kind of from Upper Lawrenceville across Stanton Heights and then stopped at Morningside last year. Those changes really have greatly reduced speeds, especially around Sunnyside Elementary, which was really important. And so Highland Park has been waiting its turn to make our part of Stanton Avenue safer. And I was able to recently move some money in to unleash DOMI to do their work. So with that, I'll hand it over, Director. Thank you, Director. She's got her own mic. All right.
Wait, is it on? It's on? It's on?
They're all live,
Great.
by the way. All your mics are live, so watch out.
So the council member gave a foreshadowing of the 2 projects that we're going to talk about tonight, and I'll pass the mic to Paige Anderson, our project manager, to talk a little bit about those projects. But just to put in context the slide behind me, which is about traffic calming specifically. So the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure is responsible for maintaining all of the public rights-of-way for the city and the infrastructure contained within. That includes over 1,000 miles of roadway, about 150 city-owned and maintained bridges, over 800 sets of public steps, over 40,000 streetlights, over 600 signalized intersections, and more. So to put the traffic calming program into context, it is a small part of what our staff is focused on, but it's a huge part of how our experience as residents of the city of Pittsburgh is. So as you can see here, we've received, since launching the program in 2019, about 1,000 requests for traffic calming. We've improved the portal, and that will go live soon for the intake process for future requests, so that we can get better information and in turn give you better information about the status of those requests. A new tool, before I pass this along, that I want to make sure everybody in this room is familiar with is that on the DOMI website, you can go to our new map portal that we launched last year. If you have submitted a traffic calming request in the city of Pittsburgh, now you can go and find out the status of that request. You can see if we've completed our evaluation of that request. You can see if the request has been deemed eligible for inclusion in our traffic calming program, because we have other safety related programs that it might be more appropriate to be included in. And you can see if there's an active project that has been connected with it. And our Engage PGH page, where you can find out information about projects from across the city's departments, you can also find information about the traffic calming projects that we're going to talk about tonight. So with that, I'm going to pass along to Paige Anderson to briefly go through the 2 projects that we are here to talk about.
Thank you, Kim. So as Councilman Groves was talking about Stanton Avenue, Phase 1, I just wanted to reiterate what a success that project has truly been at improving pedestrian safety, improving transit accessibility, improving cyclist connections between Lawrenceville, Stanton Heights, and Highland Park. Our after data has shown that the 85th percentile speeds are now 6 miles per hour lower, which is a very big difference. We've reduced speeding by 40%. So we're really excited that this project was well received, and we're excited to talk about, what's next for Stanton Ave. Yeah, absolutely. Could you go to the next slide, please? So in looking at Stanton Ave Phase 2, which is through Highland Park, we have not gone through design yet, but we have begun to assess our needs and go through the planning phases. In that, we have discovered that there is definitely a need for traffic calming. It's not as severe as what we saw on phase 1, but we are seeing 68% of vehicles speeding west of Highland Ave, and then east of Highland Ave, we're seeing 33% of cars speeding. So we're definitely going to be taking those into consideration when we go through design. There's also been a pretty concerning 5-year history of crashes, which is our standard assessment rate. We've seen 62 crashes just on this section of Stanton, and that includes 28 injuries and 1 fatality. So we definitely want to use that data to inform our design. You may have seen that we've already made some improvements at the Stanton and Negley intersection to improve safety. A lot of those crashes were there, so we're going to continue to monitor that intersection. A lot of those crashes also happened at Stanton Highland, so we're going to be trying to make focus some of our improvements at that intersection as well in this next phase. And the scope of the next phase is Stanton Ave from Chislett to Meadow and slash Heberton. So it's not the entire scope of Stanton, one phase at a time, but it's this next stretch through Highland Park. This has a lot of transit use, we've noticed. Some of these PRT bus stops have a lot of ridership. It seems as though we are hearing a lot of demand for improvements to bicycle facilities. It is on the Bike Plus plan. Sure. Sorry. No worries. Is this better? Oh yeah, much louder. So it is on the Bike Plus plan, so we're definitely going to be considering yep, absolutely. We're also going to be considering bicycle needs, pedestrian needs, transit access, and overall traffic calming and safety as we move through design. So we're working closely with the Councilwoman's office. I believe we will be reaching out with further plans and outreach around that. There will be an Engage page as well, so keep an eye out for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Paige. Again, Chris Hornstein, Director of Public Works. Just a couple of brief little improvements that we'll be making. Some of you may have already seen, but down by Lake Carnegie, that long stretch of sidewalk, which has been unattended for many years, our crews have started to replace all of that with concrete. We will be installing some ADA parking locations there, along with crosswalk, and those things should be finishing up here in the next couple of weeks. Not in the slide deck, but as a point of order, just so everyone is aware, we are doing some tree work on One Wild Place this Friday, April 14th. That will be from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. That will be coordinated, so there will be a lane closure. We've been working with the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. There will be a posted detour, but I just want to make everybody aware here that that work's going to be happening this Friday. So if we can go to the next slide. All right, and now I want to invite Kaz Pellegrini, Senior Project Architect. He's going to talk about the pedestrian tunnel project.
Thank you, Chris. Hello. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for your patience on this project. We've tried to put a lot of tender. Hello. I'd like to thank you all for your patience on this project. We've put a lot of tender, loving care into it, trying to restore it, bring it back to life again. It's an original end of the 1800s structure, and we're putting it back together again. We hope to have it done, completed by this October. So we're just about to move into phase 4. We're completing phase 3. So on that, we're on schedule, making good time. We have no serious delays, but we're moving ahead and hope to be done. And thank you again for your patience.
Hello again. So another project that DOMI's working on in collaboration with DPW is the improvements to Reservoir Drive. I'm aware that this has been discussed with the community at length in the past, so we are using those discussions and those plans as our foundation for our improvements. It is going to be repaved at the completion of the tunnel, so we're going to be working closely with them. The construction dates are not set in stone because of all the different factors, all the different variables. So, but we can say that when it is repaved, we're going to be making improvements to pedestrian facilities, improvements to the bike facilities, incorporating some traffic calming and improvements to pedestrian crosswalks and pedestrian access. Some of the traffic calming are not looking at speed humps so much as hardening the corners, trying to slow the intersections through the area, and just creating as much space as we can for pedestrians and cyclists enjoying the park. So again, we will have an Engage page up for that soon.
Can I jump in on that? Thank you. Yeah, I just want to acknowledge a couple of people who worked on that. David Hance, and yeah, is David. I haven't seen David here tonight. It's great. Oh, okay, yeah. So we're sorry to miss him, but so we worked for a year on a proposed design, but it was during the pandemic. We were all in quarantine. We had a different traffic engineer at the time, and then the tunnel just finally had to happen. So it really kind of snagged up the traffic calming project on Reservoir Drive. And so it's time now that we're looking at the end of the project, hopefully in this calendar year, to take those suggestions live so that we can get your feedback. So most of you have not seen them. It was a small working group. Is Tina Calabrese here? Tina, sorry, there you are. Thank you, everybody. Applaud for Tina. We did the heroic lift. Vivian Loftus. Thank you. Vivian was in the room. Vivian, Tina, who am I missing? And Nancy, there you are. Nancy in the back. Thank you all. It was, and Jan Irvin. I forgot. Thank you. I really apologize. It was a whole year of their lives that they spent working and reworking these designs. So now we can get community feedback for them. And then the goal is to have, community feedback so that we can do any revisions, and then have those plans aligned with the street reopening so that we have a safe space for all of the users on Reservoir Drive. And it's been a long time coming, so I appreciate everybody's work. All right, well, who am I going to next, Rebecca? Okay, back to Jake. And what's our topic here? Oh, yes, this brings us to the other part of Heth's Run. We had community engagement here 7, maybe 8 years ago around community uses for the valley, which we've been using as a dump and as a DPW area for the Heth's Valley here in this very room. And once again, when you're talking about city projects, there are so many chess pieces to move that it takes a very long time. But Jake's going to tell us about the next part. Director Pollack, thank you.
Thanks, Councilwoman. And in fact, I think I was here 7 or 8 years ago during that community engagement that you mentioned. So as the Councilwoman mentioned, Heth's Run, which is, for those who don't know, kind of the topographical feature, like the valley that runs between Highland Park and Morningside that sort of flows down, if it were a stream, towards the zoo parking lot, is an important piece of our city's hydrological infrastructure and a place where a lot of stormwater wants to go in storm events. And so there have been, rightfully, long-standing desires among the neighborhoods bordering it to invest in stormwater infrastructure there and to make those sort of final connections between this part of the city and the Allegheny River. We remain committed to seeing that through. As folks who were around for earlier parts of that conversation will know, the biggest structural sort of like thing that we have to address in order to make that happen is how that infrastructure is accommodated through what is presently the zoo parking lot. And so as a result, a lot of how that is resolved hinges on finalization of a new lease with the zoo, which we are presently in the middle of, and we're figuring out how visitor access to the zoo, which is obviously also very important to our city, can be accommodated, but also allow for the space necessary to make this stormwater connection, right? And so we're presently working through that as we speak, and are hopeful that resolution can be arrived at in the near future. You know, big picture, we want to make sure that that is achieved, and we're fully committed to it, but the particulars about how that happens will be dependent on how we work through the final phases of a conversation with the zoo. So.
Director, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Sure.
Even though I'm completely disrupting what our run of show was supposed to be. Because we have a question specifically about Heth's Run. So what is the city doing to replace that kind of parking lot with landscaping and parking structure and fix the leaking sewer lines in the valley and add trails and connection to the river? I think you addressed part of that because it hinges on the zoo. So if you don't mind expanding a little bit.
I can answer sort of all parts of that, some of which I think I spoke to, but I can say more specifically, right? So there are two pieces to that part of the valley. You know, one is the fully paved, lined, well-established zoo parking lot, and that's mostly what I was just referring to, is we need to figure out those final connections. There's another part of that valley which is sometimes used by the zoo as parking, in particular on high utilization days, but serves as kind of a, for lack of a better word, a flex space. I mean, people park there, the people park there who are visiting the zoo. It is a DPW active kind of utility area, and in particular right now related to a lot of very important and very worthy utility work happening in this community. It's a staging area for PWSA and others as it relates to lead line replacement or very necessary rising main replacement. So it's a busy spot at the moment. Everything that's occurring there now is related essentially to important and vital utility projects. PWSA, I'm happy to say, is replacing lead lines in this neighborhood at the moment. I know that may come with some disruption to folks as they try to use the streets and sidewalks, but the advantage or the value, of course, is very clear, which is that lead is a poisonous material that's unsafe at any level, and so eliminating it from our water system, it has an important public health advantage, and so the process of taking it out might be disruptive, but the value is clear. Also, Highland Park as a neighborhood is the home of the core water infrastructure for 2/3 of city residents, right? Other than those folks who live in the north side, everyone who lives within city limits and has PWSA water service gets their water from one of the two reservoirs in this neighborhood. And so the hard infrastructure connections between the water treatment plant and those two reservoirs is essential to keeping everyone connected to healthy and reliable water service. And of course, keeping those reservoirs in connection to that system will occasionally come with some headaches here, but the value to our city as a whole is very straightforward. So as all that work is happening, and I know it's a very busy time in doing that work here in the neighborhood, there's a fair amount of activity throughout the community, and some of that is connected to temporary action at that site. But those are not long-term uses, and the long-term vision for that part of the Heth's Run Valley and for the community as a whole is for integration into the park and for utilization to manage stormwater. The exact form of that is still to be determined and contingent upon other things like finalizing the zoo lease, as I mentioned. But most of what you're seeing and hearing down there is not permanent construction activity, but connected to otherwise very critical utility work happening in the neighborhood.
I'm going to pass it. Here, I'm going to grab it. I keep grabbing these microphones, so thank you. So you heard the city's committing to the Hess Green Plan and the kind of commissioning of that part of the park into active public space, which is what the neighborhood has been working towards for a very long time, going back decades actually, with the construction of the Butler Street Bridge and the excavation under it so that we can connect to the rivers. And so we're going to move on to PWSA next. And I may just jump in, Director, now that I've kind of unleashed, I've got some of the index cards in front of me. So forgive me if I interrupt you to have you expound on any one of the issues. I feel like we're kind of running over. We're at 7 o'clock. Rebecca, who have we heard from everyone? Is Will the last? So I'm just kind of taking care of some of the questions as we go so to make sure that we get to everything. Excuse me. Director Pickering. Oh, you know what? I'm going to grab one back. Also, I was supposed to give an acknowledgement to Megan Winters, who's here from Senator Lindsey Williams' office. Megan, where are you? And Twanda Carlisle's here from Representative Latasha Mays' office. Thank you. And I failed to acknowledge Stephanie Walsh, President of Highland Park Community Council, who has done the heavy lifting on so many of these projects. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, Director. Apologize.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Again, Will Pickering. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of your Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority. Director Pollack really hit on the critical nature that the Highland Park residential community plays in our drinking water system, and it's one of the reasons we've been a real hotbed of activity in your backyards, your front yards. We're doing our best to get out of your way as soon as possible, but all of this is going to result in a drinking water system that not just this current generation, but future generations can rely on. I also, in an extension of that recognition, I want to thank those of you who may have been impacted by recent outages and boil water advisories for your patience. Some of these incidents are unavoidable and unfortunate, but please know that we at PWSA are completely committed to getting residents back in water when they're out of water, or getting them out of these precautionary advisories when they do take place. I don't want to belabor the project updates. We have a ton of information on our website. Jake touched on a critical element that we have. We're building a new pump station that's going to provide redundancy between the covered Highland 2 reservoir and that open air reservoir in Highland 1. Those are kind of two of those super systems, two of the three that we have that right now can't speak to one another. So if we have an outage on one system, we're limited in the amount that we can pump into the other. So this is the work that's happening right at the foot of Mellon Terrace. We're relocating some sewer line in order to make room for the pipe that is going to connect to a new pump station. So that is, again, one of these hotbeds of activities. That's where we did have a contractor, unfortunately, excavate a water line and create an outage late last month that did result in that precautionary boil water advisory. But again, at the end of this project, we're going to have a more redundant and resilient system. The rising mains 3 and 4 are largely happening out of sight, but they are critical, and they are happening in Highland Park near the zoo property. These are large diameter water mains that are running from what we call the Brecken pump station at our Brilliant Yard that we share with the city of Pittsburgh, and they run uphill to either that Highland 1 or Highland 2 reservoir. These are pipes that are over 100 years old, and so we are strategically rehabilitating them. We actually had people walking through these pipes. We took them out of service, and we have been relining them to give them another century, we believe, of useful life. Jake also mentioned our lead service line replacement program, thanks in part to a very generous extension of American Recovery Plan Act federal funds from the city of Pittsburgh. We have been replacing lead service lines, trying to get to every neighborhood in the city of Pittsburgh, but we've been in Highland Park and we've been in East Liberty. Please know if we have excavated your sidewalk or your street related to that work, we are coming back in the next month or so to restore those sites with new sidewalk pads and new roadways. That also goes for the water main replacement program that we have been active on a lot of streets in Highland Park. In the next few weeks, now that weather is better and the asphalt plants are open, we're going to be working on concrete and sidewalks and then rehabilitating that roadway. And we, again, recognize we have been at a lot of doorsteps for a long period of time. We've had to coordinate with other utilities, and on some of these blocks we're doing water and sewer work. So if all goes according to plan, it'll be another 80 years before PWSA is digging on these residential streets. So again, thanks for the opportunity. I'm really happy to answer any questions you might have, and thank you for your patience as we continue to we're not going away from Highland Park. We look forward to continuing to work with you all to make sure that we have the water system that our community really deserves.
Director, touching on the water main replacements, I know that I live on one off of Euclid, and so it's been 13 months. And so maybe you could touch on that water main replacement, and I'm going to prompt you a little bit because it was water, and then it was sewer, and it's actually not you out there right now, it's People's Gas.
That's right, and I will say we have been out there longer than we would like. The goal is, like I mentioned, to be able to mobilize contractors once, cause the disruption once. We had an opportunity to replace the entire water main on several blocks. In addition, we replace lead lines when we confront them as we do that work. We also knew that we had some failing sewers in the neighborhood, so we've been able to strategically reline those and do what we call point repair, so there has been some digging that's been necessary. And then toward the end of our project, albeit a little unexpectedly, People's Gas determined that they wanted to get into some of these project sites and do some work in that right-of-way. Hopefully, when we're done, as I keep mentioning, we will be out of your hair for a generation there, but that is one of the reasons it's taken much longer. We have also learned a lot of lessons through this experience of combining the water and sewer work. We're holding our contractors more accountable in the contracts that we will have going forward, but I really do appreciate your personal patience and the disruption it's caused, and we are, as I mentioned, we'll be back on those streets to do final restoration here in the coming weeks.
We don't have People's Gas here with us tonight, but the crews told me they were trying to wrap up that specific section, which is basically like below Stanton, which is in District 9, and in the East Liberty part of Euclid, and then in the Highland Park part of Euclid up to about Wellesley by May, and do that full repaving. But then they'll be continuing, People's Gas will be continuing northerly on Euclid, I think all the way to Bunker Hill. So that work's continuing. I think I have that right. Does anybody correct me or know more authoritatively than me? No? Okay. So that was one of the questions, so thank you, Director. Do we have any other presentations, Rebecca, from the mayors? Okay, so I have questions in front of me from index cards. I don't know if there are any additional ones. I feel that some of them were addressed. I had one specifically back to the firing range at the beginning, which was kind of like, what are specific questions for the range? And the mayor said, basically, they're actively working on it, but there's no specific plan that we can show you tonight. Right, so I'm gonna move on to back to Domi, and because there's some of I think there are some questions that weren't directly addressed in the presentations. I'm gonna go to North Negley onto Bryant Street. Can you please address the speeding car issue when cars are turning off of North Negley and onto Bryant Street? Maybe again, traffic calming, speed bump, kind of like what would next steps there be? Do you have your own mic down there? Oh, sorry.
Hi, thank you for that question. I don't think that intersection is in the scope of either of the projects that we prepared for tonight, so what we'll have to do is take that back and take a look at the data collection potential to see what the right interventions might be. Someone's raising their hand if that's...
You know, again, if we don't have the answer, whoever addressed that question, can you make sure that you let us know who you are so we can get back to you with an answer? I mean, we really want to get back to you with answers. Was yours? So can we get your name and number before you? Okay.
Yeah. And I've got someone there. Okay, so we also have, this one is also Domi, and I think, Director, I'm going to frame this a little bit, and it's a little bit more about permitting for contractors and workers. Again, with all of these construction projects, there's a lot of construction vehicles and a lot of street closures and disruptions. So this one specifically is about the first part of Farragut. due to remodeling and unmovable cars, there's a parking problem. So maybe the question is about kind of like, what is our capacity to resolve issues? It's city right-of-way, right? And it's parkable curb, but there's...
It sounds like this might be related to a private property remodeling, so a permit that might have, and I don't know if anybody in the audience has more details. If there is a public right-of-way impact related to a non-public right-of-way project, then the correct process is to come to DOMI and get a permit to utilize the public space for the staging of materials related to that non-right-of-way project. One of the challenges is, I think the department, the permits, licenses, and inspection department issues 10,000 permits a year. DOMI issues 22,000 permits a year, and they're not always connected to the same exact sites. So if there is an issue with a specific location, just like the mayor requested of the previous person, if you can let us know the specific address and your contact information, we can take a look in our system and follow up on that.
Thank you, Director. I'm going to follow up on that one with a Stanton Avenue, which is a bit of a combination between DPW and DOMI, because it's the parking around the tennis courts and the proposed changes for the tennis courts, which is the addition of lighting. And with the addition of lighting, does that mean that there will be more activity at the tennis courts later? And if that's true, then what is the city's plans for accommodating parking for residents if there's so much parking that is going to be happening for the tennis courts? And Roberta, if I didn't articulate that clearly enough, is that all right? Okay.
Tennis courts are seasonal, and normally as it starts getting darker later, you can play later, but we've heard the lights are basically going to be on until 11 p.m. Of course, that's a conversation we also like to have, but I might have to park, a mile or half a mile or something from my house and carry groceries. I can't move my car past 11. That's like a nightmarish sort of situation. We've considered, would you restrict parking where the houses are to the residents? Would you build a parking lot? What's really happening with the lights? But yeah, the parking is probably the main big thing. Most of us don't have garages.
So I think, again, that's a combination of what, sorry, I've got the deputy mayor taking that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. As I understand it, and I'll look to Rebecca to tell me if I'm wrong, the exact hours of operation of even the lighted tennis courts is still being finalized. Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah, sorry. So
I have now gone through 2 different myself and two of my neighbors have caught in my brains, and you in these documents say that since November you've decided to permit these lights with a standing permit from the Highland Park Tennis Club until 11 p.m. And then you told me that you've made no decision. So I would just like truth, honesty, and equity.
I think I know a little bit about this one. Yeah?
Let Lisa go.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. This is actually, I think, the situation that you're describing is being led in the mayor's team by the Director of Parks and Rec, Catherine Vargas, who's not with us tonight. My understanding, if this is incorrect, come in, let's talk after the meeting, that she has communicated and has offered to sit down to talk about how long the lights will be on with you all and to talk. Well, let's start today, because I spoke to Director Vargas today to get an update on where we were, and she said that she's waiting for a date from you all, that she extended an invitation. She's always, I'm sorry?
There is also a cancellation, and there's also in these documents what has been put in writing from the city goes in direct conflict from what we got in the right to know request. So I take a very big offense that I had to hire an attorney with my neighbors to even get a seat at the table, because Councilwoman Gross wouldn't respond for weeks to all of our emails.
That I can't comment on. I would be happy to take your documentation, which I myself have not seen, and then...
So I'd like the full set of documents, actually. If you could get that for us, that'd be great.
I'm not sure what that is. I was not included in the right to know request because I have not been included in any of that correspondence. But I'm happy to look at what you have or talk about what else you'd like. But what I really would like to underline is that it is absolutely my understanding that Director Vargas is anxious to sit down and move through these, partly because she would like to understand where you're coming from and figure out whatever accommodations can be made, and partly because, you know, as you pointed out, the season's coming and people would like to use the facility. So I would say it would be an important step. We should understand what has happened in the past. I think an important step today would be to make that meeting.
In the back.
Across the street from the tennis courts, 40 years, right across. I know what the company of our doors have got us. In all the years I've lived here, no one has come to our doors. The parking, I have people parking my driveway. I have people park so close to my car that I couldn't get out. That's not fair to us. I understand the tennis courts. My kids play home, don't get me wrong. The parking is unacceptable. There has to be some kind of way to spread across. We should not park our cars in Pittsburgh. And then you have a porta potty in front of your house, which is awful. Which I've called 311 a million times and got no response. When I did get there, they said the case was closed. No referral to me saying why the case is closed. Now there's two of them. I don't get it.
Maybe I can help take the temperature down just a little. My name is Chris. I'm certain I'm the only professional tennis player in this room. So what I can tell you is it's very important to take any resident. I don't know anything about this situation, but I've played on like thousands of tennis courts. There's no world where lights should outweigh a medical need. I mean, this is the U.S. Nobody even plays tennis, like, compared to the rest of the world. So we got to be realistic.
Nicole. So, Nicole, here's what we'll do. After this is over, you and I, Lisa, will get together. We'll set up a time where we can sit down, because I'm not sure all the documentation that you're asking for, because it's the first I've heard of it. So what we'll do is we'll get together and we'll see what we can work out. We'll also have Director Vargas in the room as well, since y'all were scheduling to set up a meeting. We will set up a meeting, we'll go over the documentation that you have, and then we will talk with Dr. Vargas to see what type of outcome we can come up with.
Thank you. We're going to talk about the lights, but we'll also talk about the parking all together in that conversation. Right? Thank you. So I'm going to switch to one that I didn't have in front of us before, so thank you for bringing it up. There's two more kind of questions for DPW and the park, more about park management. The first of them are trees and the health of trees in the park proper, especially the dead or dying trees. It says in and around the park. Will the park remove them, or how is kind of the tree maintenance in the park going to happen? Director Hornstein, do you have a mic down there to speak to that?
I do, yeah. Hold on for it. I'm just bringing up my notes because I know that everyone...
I might as well throw in deer population with that, because that was the other one with it, all right?
I'm going to ask Chief Frank to address the deer population conversation. Regarding trees, because I know everybody here in this community is very compassionate towards trees. So we do working with the PA Conservancy to conduct site inspections for new street tree plantings this fall. So several residents have already reached out to us to get additional street trees planted as part of the Tree Vitalize program. Residents interested in getting an assessment for a new tree can go on the DPW City Forestry page and to download the free request form. Those can be emailed or sent directly to the forestry. So tree planting within the park, it will continue as part of ongoing restoration work. Tree Pittsburgh is opportunities for folks to volunteer if they'd like to help. Please visit Tree Pittsburgh if you're interested in volunteering. We have approximately, regarding regular maintenance, pruning, I did mention the work along One Wild Place. That'll be happening this Friday. We have regular pruning in efforts with trees in the park. I know we do have a number of still outstanding 311s. I believe that number is about 35, but all of those that we have in our queue are 6 to 7 months old. And Chief Frank, if you want to address the deer population.
Before we go into the deer population, because I got a question first, I'd like for JP to just address some of the other situations regarding the trees in the park.
Thanks, Mayor. In addition to everything that Director Hornstein mentioned, which covers probably 90% of the trees in Highland Park or in the neighborhood, it might be helpful to know that occasionally, in particular, when there are long-standing old-growth trees that are part of what we would call the toe slope, or like the part of the hillside that is holding up one of the reservoirs, right? Its root system becomes integral to securing that side of the reservoir and keeping the reservoir in place. So occasionally, management of the replacement of those trees and ensuring that even if the tree might die, that a new sufficient growth has occurred to continue to hold the hillside up is important. So for the most part, what Director Hornstein said about trees in the park generally holds, but in particular, those that are very near the edge of the two reservoirs have to be particularly carefully managed by us, and though they might be no longer kind of flowering or producing leaves, their roots might be necessary to the engineered integrity of that slope, which is important to protect our drinking water system. So we appreciate everyone's understanding on that.
Speak up just a little bit, please.
I was going to read. Right. So the
branches falling down every time there's a storm, and I've called everyone about a lot of. I've never seen anything
So we're looking for really a better inventory of the trees that are dead and really a plan for addressing them. Right.
No, we appreciate it.
I would also like to say that a lot of people are having picnics under the trees in the park, living and dead trees, to gunfire, to blasts from automatic weapons, from firing. It has been in our neighborhood for 40 years, not 30 years. And Gross said that the issue had been addressed at this meeting. I don't feel that the issue has been addressed at this meeting. People are very affected by the sound of gunfire. I bet there's nobody in this room whose life is not somehow touched by gunfire. From my neighbor whose 13-year-old daughter shot herself this past fall, and the family woke up. So that was terrible. It's a tragedy. It happens in every neighborhood in America, tragedies like that. But that family woke up the next day and woke up 2 days later to go bury her and walked out their front door into blasts from automatic weapons fire, and they're living with this. This is traumatic. Our kids are, I need to take a breath. Our kids are regularly in active shooter drills in their schools, and they are learning to save their own lives by crushing themselves behind a desk or rushing into a closet. This is normal in every city in America, but in our neighborhood, these same children are coming home and hearing gunfire. The gunfire can happen on any day, and often it happens all day long, and sometimes it happens at night. Like, you can light candles for Friday night Sabbath and walk out to have a nice walk, and they'll be firing starting at the firing range.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
I really want to thank you for standing up and having courage to address this issue. And I think it's because the council person just asked you this early on. The mayor addressed this already, so then you've gone to all other stuff. And I sat here wondering, as did Joy, and I'm sure some other people in this room, is that some substance of how Councilman Rose is going to address the firing issue?
If
is that all she has to say about it? And I also really wonder, and I was involved in politics for a long time, I worked for the PWSA and blah, blah, blah. I know how hard it is to get things done. But I'd like to know what specifically took place in the last year and a half. We lots of meetings, there were this, there were that, and this, we could have. What specifically took place? How many meetings have there been? Where are you in terms of planning for this? Joy talked about her neighbor. I had a neighbor who had to put her daughter up in hotels because she has PTSD. You know where that neighbor is now? Wilkins Township, because she couldn't take it. Her daughter twice almost overdosed because of the trauma of that mission. People on my street are telling me they wish they would have never moved to Highland Park. People on my street are telling me they wish they could leave Highland Park. As Joy said, kids are traumatized every day. I wish Vivian was still here because she sent me a video of the playground at the farmhouse where children are playing and all you hear is gunfire.
And it's not just
children are playing.
It's not even just for the people on the east side of Highland Park. It's for everyone in the city and in the surrounding neighborhoods, including Larmer, Lincoln Leamington, Morningside, Stanton Heights. They come to use the park. There's a very popular public pool, and all day long in the summer, those children and families at the pool are bathed in gunfire. It's just not right. I have a neighbor who's a senior lady and waits to walk her, but her dog is so terrified by the gunfire. And she texts me and says, when is the gunfire going to stop? They said they were going to stop at 2 o'clock. They're still going on. I can't take my dog outside. What? In the afternoon. I mean, we don't know, when this is going to happen, but even if we did know, and they have posted gunfire hours, it doesn't matter. It doesn't lessen the trauma of hearing and living in gunfire, even if you know it's starting at 10 and stopping at 3.
Suppressors. Fire.
Sure. This one worked? Yeah, that's better. Well, so suppressor, the officers have to qualify as the weapon is carried. So a suppressor can impact the aim and the discharge of the weapon, so they have to qualify as it is and practice as it is. They do use suppressors on some of them, some of the ones at the range, but they can't use them for all training. Unfortunately, by state regulations and how they have to qualify, it's the weapon they carry on their duty, when they're on duty, as they carry it, which normally we don't have suppressors on them. Certain weapons will have suppressors, yes. Usually it's a specialized unit, though. Our normal patrol officers don't.
I'd like if I might read the comment from the 1,000th person who signed the
Say something. Let's respond, and we'll keep going.
Okay.
I'm just going to, before that, I'm just going to say that, so everyone here at the table has access to the files that Mr. Clara has given us going back 40 years, forgive me for misstating that, including the videos. I personally know that Director Schmidt has, Director of Public Safety has looked at them as well. It was at one of the first conversations we had when the mayor got sworn in with his team was to address this issue. I've personally sat with Director Schmidt and called other firing ranges in the region, trying to get our officers to other ranges so they won't be using this one. But they were booked, right? And they're booked up. So we have taken your suggestions and we do pursue them. We've heard a commitment from the mayor that we are going to find a solution. It's just not in front of us right now.
So a couple things, and then I'm going to take your question, all right? So,
there's a pandemic. I mean, in the 4 decades since the range was built, the assault weapons ban expired, and a global pandemic has turned our homes into our schools and workplaces. So we're home so much more, and our kids are home so much more. And the correct amount of rounds of gunfire a neighborhood in America, a residential city neighborhood in America, should hear is 0.
So let me, when we first came on, we did look around. The one thing that we found, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm using the wrong terminology or if I'm stating it the wrong way, just so I can make sure I'm correct. What we found out is that a while ago was the FBI who came to the city, correct? And they wanted to be able to establish a shooting range with the city, which would have moved it. It was rejected. And so since it was rejected, it went to the county, correct? Where? Monroeville. And they built it with the Monroeville because they accepted it. So that was one that was off the table. The second thing that we tried to do was just call around to see if there was an alternative to where they can go shoot until we can do a longer range plan to remove it, because there was no plan in place. We couldn't find any. Third thing we did was start thinking about what can be a short-term fix in regards to if we can't find nowhere for them to go shoot, if we eliminated the deal with the FBI because for whatever reason, I don't know, what would be the third option? The third option we talked about was, you know, as she stated, is just a way that we can make the gun noise a little bit more quieter, but we can't. So I told my team, let's start talking about where we see the gun range in the next couple of years. Can we put something together? Because I understand. I mean, I was a state rep. I get what you're saying. I know it. I hear it when I jog. But I have to be able to put something together. I have to be able to find somewhere where we can relocate the shooting range, the whole nine. And so we're looking, you know, we could talk about, the gentleman asked what has been done in a year and a half. But I just gave you 3 things that we looked at to be able to see if we can move it in the short run. But that was already two was already rejected. 1 wasn't feasible anymore because they did it in Monroeville. The last thing we're just trying to do is saying, hey, we know we got to do a public safety facility, the whole nine. How do we do it? What do we do? How do we move it up there? How do we get things done? So yes, we are looking at it. There's no question about it. I just didn't want to come here and be like everybody else and say, I have a concrete answer for me to come back 6 months from now and say, hey, we still haven't done anything. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is be able to say, here's where we're at. We're moving. We're looking at different things. I'm sharing with you what we've already looked at, so you don't think that we're just sitting here saying, oh, well, we're just doing plans. We actually begin to look proactively at other areas that we could go to try to mitigate the situation that's just not available. So now we have to look at how do we create this new range? Where do we put it at? How do we get it? And that's what we're looking at now. But it would be premature for me to say that we have those answers. So I know we're looking at it. When I come back, and, you know, I'm hoping to have a report for you because I want to. We're really working on it. But at this moment in time, we've exhausted a couple of our possibilities. We're trying to create new ones so that we can stop it. But that's going to take us a little bit of time. There was no plan when we came in. There was not like, hey, here's a plan for the shooting range. Here's where we believe it can go. Here's what we're working on. No, we didn't have none of that. We're creating all this ourselves to try to make that situation better.
If every other city in America, and I called every city in this country, there are 57 of them, I called 56 because Pittsburgh is one of them, puts their shooting range near the airport or in an industrial neighborhood, or they have an enclosed shooting range, why are we stuck with the shooting range? It sure seems like the city doesn't care about us. If we have any
conflict of interest with the police, that's why it hasn't been for the last 40 years.
I don't know about the conflict of interest with the police. I'm not sure about that, so I can't comment on that. And in other areas where they built a shooting range in industrial areas, I agree with that. But us coming in, that's not where it's at. It's right there off of Washington Boulevard, and I know that we have to create plans to get it moved. I get that, and we're working towards that. That's what we're doing. We're working towards what we can do. There was no plan, and I'm sorry if I said 30 years and it was 40 years, my apology. But there was no plan in place for us to move. And so we have to create this as we go. And so that's why I came to share with you tonight. Deb has asked me from the time I got in, hey, how are we doing with this? Well, Deb, we're going to check with the FBI, see if we can get, that was gone. Hey, we're going to check with other shooting ranges, that was gone. So it's not like we just came in and didn't do anything. We've actually come in and tried to be proactive and see if we can get other areas where the shooting could occur. We have not been able to do that. They have not been receptive to us doing that. So now we know we have to look a little bit further in order to get it correct. It wasn't. So it was before we... Come up front, please. Come up, because I can't hear me.
Mayor, I think I can hear him if it's okay. Yeah. So.
Let him ask you, Jake. Let him ask you.
You just said that they turned it down. I'm just curious to know.
So, go ahead. That was when it first occurred. Who was they?
was 14 years ago, so I'm not sure.
So the 14 years ago, the administration was.
You were making proposals.
No, I didn't say I.
It sounded very much like.
No, and I apologize if I did. If I said something that was misinterpreted, I apologize. What I said is.
Any proposals to anybody about any of this, in terms of just having them do it elsewhere?
So we've sought in the past year and a half range time at other ranges in the region. I believe what the mayor was referring to and what Director Schmidt just clarified, there is a joint FBI and others range in Monroeville where we have sought to use range time there to defer time at the range here. We are presently maximizing the amount of time we can get on their schedule, and there's no more room to add more training to their schedule. The county has a range in the North Hill. I'm sorry, Joy.
Why can't they extend their schedule? I mean, if everybody...
Please let me finish.
Yeah, so there's a county-run range in the North Hills at their training facility. We use that to the greatest extent that we can get time there. There are other ranges throughout the region, which you heard the councilwoman say. We've investigated ways in which we can divert as much of our scheduled time to these other ranges as possible to limit the extent to which we're using the range here. So we folded those other regional resources into our training procedure to the greatest extent possible. I think you are all right, you are all correct that the answer is to move the range to an indoor enclosed facility, which is our plan. And consistent with what's been said before, the goal is to incorporate the construction of a facility, not where it's currently located, into a new training facility within the next few years. The process to get there is complicated, and it involves work that is occurring right now to plan for what a comprehensive public safety training facility that includes an indoor range would require, so that we can begin to fund in our capital budget the construction of that facility.
There was an article about it in City Paper. There's a $120 million budget. There's actually no plan. Nothing's been done on it, and we just want the gunfire to stop now. It's not our job to come up with a place for the police to train. We want them to train. We can't live with gunfire anymore.
Jake, I just have a quick question for you, because I did misunderstand, Mayor, and I apologize. You are constrained, you're saying, by the hours that are available in other facilities, not that somebody has turned down your proposals, and that's all I really want to
Well, many years ago, there was a potential proposal for a joint facility that was turned down back then. But today, yes, we're constrained by the hours of availability at other ranges.
The police are amenable to going to these other places if there are more hours available?
They train at other locations now to the extent that we're able to book hours there. So yes.
And that limits the amount that they're doing at the open air range?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the end of that.
That limits the amount of time?
That offsets the amount of time they're using at the facility in Highland Park, yes. But I live on Winterton Street, so I can hear the fire from my own house. I do understand why this is a topic that you're rightfully concerned by, and I am too, and the mayor is too, and the councilwoman is too. We for reasons you've all mentioned, right? At the same time, we can't have police officers who aren't certified to use their service weapons in line of duty, so we have to balance those two. I know no one is saying that. Believe me, I'm emphasizing that you're not saying that, and we all agree that that's important, and we all agree that we need to relocate the range in the long term. I'm sorry, is it Joy?
Yes.
Joy, you mentioned recent news coverage of the safety training facility, and I think this points back to a point the mayor made earlier. There was a large and unexpended budget towards building that facility that didn't have a concrete plan behind it, and so we have begun in the past year an exercise with Director Hornstein to actually create a real constructible plan for a joint public safety training facility, and in this year's capital budget intend to fund such a project like that, to build a joint public safety training facility, including a range, that will solve this issue. But it will take us a few years between when we started that work and when that project will be completed. There was discussion of such a thing for a while that didn't have a construction plan behind it. So that is our challenge, right? That pre-COVID, there was a idea for such a plan. That plan was not completed, and thus it falls to us to actually create a constructible plan that makes that change.
Steph.
Thank you. So this issue has sort of risen and fallen in the neighborhood's attention over the years. In 2020, with the COVID closures and complications with police training, really brought this issue to sort of heightened attention again in the neighborhood. So somewhere 2020, 2021, the Neighborhood Association created a firing range working group. Jake. The HPCC created a firing range working group. Many of you are in the audience participated. And at that time, with Mayor Pedito, we would meet with city officials, with Councilwoman Gross, about once a month to talk about this issue. And then we tried to continue those conversations. After your transition, we recognize that it's a big process taking leadership of the city. We invited representatives from the administration to a community meeting, again, which many people here attended back in October, sort of laid out the history again to make sure new staff people understood. And while I think people recognize that the long-term solution is a long-term solution, none of these projects are quick for many reasons. There are short-term measures that around scheduling, around sound mitigation, that is a short-term potential that have not been considered. And at that meeting, your representative said in no uncertain terms that at that time this was not a priority of the administration, that the administration would not be spending any money on this. Right? So maybe that has changed, but we have found that in the past, and again, under the other administration, the Public Safety Department has not acted in good faith with the community. They've made promises about scheduling that they haven't kept. They haven't met with the organization when we've asked to meet. We've requested for several years the most recent sound study and the consultant report about reorienting the site to address sound, and never gotten any response, and that includes under your administration in terms of getting these documentations. So yes, definitely it's a long-term problem. There's long-term solutions, but there's also short-term things that could be done that I think the neighborhood would really appreciate seeing more of a good faith effort to address it in the short term.
What street is that?
And construction happened was insane. We came home and there was so much hard in the wrong direction on my street. That actually was the only one I was pissing off to go across the street to drive here. We had 2 cars to drive the wrong way down my one-way street. It's insane. It's traffic and you think, oh, it's just not respected anymore. It's one-way street. And you say, oh, this is just a
It is changing because people now know about streets they didn't know about before because their phone tells them about them, right? We've had people drive down people's driveways like they were city streets, right, in other parts. It really is, and it's on residential streets that drivers wouldn't have known about before. And no, they're not. No, they're not. That someone's doing that on their own. Yep.
So, real quick. Right. So, no, hold on.
Yeah. No, you're right about. We're running out. We're running towards 8 o'clock. So if you don't mind, I think we get your very important point, which I'm just going to summarize. Yeah. And so. I do, and thank you for raising it back up again. So neighborhood streets are a network, right? It's not just one speed bump on one street or one stop sign on your corner. You might make the traffic worse on this next street over. And so what we've done with DOMI in the past, and I know that they're overburdened, and I know the director already told us that they have far too many requests for the amount of work that they're able to do. And we are prioritizing Stanton Avenue Phase 2 for this year. But what has worked in the past was when DOMI came out to a neighborhood and we kind of looked at every street on a map and did it more like a charrette, so that everybody could put their problems on the map, so that then the engineers could take it back downtown with them and try to come up with a more comprehensive plan for those changes. The first neighborhood we did it at, I want to say it was 2018, was in Polish Hill, which has a complicated street grid because, you know, it's all rectangular and it's hanging off a hillside. And it really worked because the neighborhood was able to put all of the problem spots on their map. And when the engineers from DOMI brought it back out to the neighborhood, they did a really good job as a neighborhood of prioritizing which changes were important to make, and those were able to happen. It didn't work out so well in other neighborhoods when neighbors just couldn't come to a consensus about what to prioritize. But it still helps the department kind of take the road network as a network, instead of just your issue and then your issue and then your issue, and who knows what results will be for drivers, like driving down a one-way street. So I am going to kind of leave that out there, and I'll give the director a chance to respond. But it really, we have, it is different to look at the neighborhood as a network of streets rather than just take each individual traffic calming request separately. Thank you. That's why I'm handing it over to the director right now.
Thank you, council member. And in 30 seconds, so thank you for your notes. We're going to look at that specific acute issue to see if there's detour signage or something that can be improved. You're right. We're trying to out-engineer human behavior. I hear this in every community, that the streets have not typically changed in most communities, but the behavior of drivers on those streets has changed in those communities. It is a very difficult proposition for our department. The way we approach it is, you saw traffic calming. You can request it. The way to get this initiated is to raise your hand. I'm sure you have already. I'm sure you've got a line on our map that we have started to collect data on. We prioritize our investments, meaning the time of our staff, the capital budget project requests, and the grant applications based on the data that we have. We look at things, and please look at our pedestrian safety action plan that is on our website. That was a project with the Federal Highway Administration where we evaluated, like the council member said, the entire city to identify the highest risk and highest need locations in our city for pedestrian safety, because we know in our city, like most cities right now, pedestrian crashes are going up, pedestrian fatalities might be going up. And so with our limited resources, we are laser focused on the locations with the greatest need. But what we can do, and to answer the question about how you initiate those neighborhood plans, is looking at the network where we see that we've got a lot of requests. We have issued recent mobility plans that are network focused. You can see on our website we recently completed Homewood. There's a draft for East Liberty. Those locations were identified in part because of that pedestrian safety action plan. So that's how those major network plans are getting addressed, but we are looking at every single request that we receive through our traffic calming program to see if it should be rolled into a bigger project or if it can be treated through that program.
Can I just add one thing quickly? Yeah. Question about, are you monitoring all the things that could be put in place, like the roundabouts or Highland Street and I frankly still see more freely behavior, and I think it seems to be adding potential danger rather than, fixing the problems.
So, one So one thing I'd like to say, I don't think we can take any more comments about, but there's an important point that I don't want to lose before we go about the traffic calming, which is that I think when we have pedestrian vehicle collisions or other kinds of collisions, we sort of imagine that those are people outside our neighborhood that are making that happen, but our data show that a lot of those behaviors and a lot of those accidents, 90% of them are people who live very close, they're in the neighborhood. So at the same time that we want to explore design physical solutions of the sort that DOMI does traffic calming, DOMI does hard corners, DOMI does those kinds of things, neighborhood services, along with public safety, really want to come out and do some community meetings with folks, because there's power in this room to do some of the behavior work that we can't get at with higher curbs or more signs or better signs, because people's behavior is just straight up more erratic than it has been in the past. And the only solution for that is community power and the kind of love that neighbors have for one another. So we need to do some of that work as well, and we'd really like to come back and do some of that work with y'all, because that's a power that you have.
So here's what we'll do. I know there was 2 hours. It seems like we could have went 3 hours. But we will come back. We will be back with updates on what we're doing. Then that way you can see for yourself that we are moving forward. We just wanted to come here today and just talk about what's going on, hear from you, take back what you say, and be able to come up with some plans. But we definitely wanted to be transparent with you about where we're at and where we're trying to go. And what we will do is we will come back again and give you an update on where we are and a lot of the topics that we talked about today. So I just want to say I appreciate you coming out. I thank you for coming out.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a suggestion?
Yes, sir.
You get 3 lists of 3x5 cars, right? So we have 5 people left. My suggestion is that you distribute those to the appropriate people on your staff, have them respond,
Right.
have them cover this or with answers to those questions.
And I apologize, but I apologize that we get into them all. I know we sort of talking about the firing range, but it was important. Yeah. But, correct. Correct. So what we'll do is we'll do just that. But we'll probably need, like, for you to write down which question is yours so that we can get back to you. Okay. Okay. All right.
The other thing is, I'd like to thank you all for your time. I think it's a good start for what we need to do.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I just want to thank you, Highland Park, for having us tonight. We will get back to the questions that we didn't answer, but for anybody that didn't get the question answered, if you come up to the councilwoman and just write your name and how to get in contact with you with your question, we will get back to you. Thanks again.